All right, men, which is more masculine? Working 17 hours a day, driving a jacked up truck, and drinking all weekend long? Or dealing with your emotional insecurities, figuring out your identity, and learning to be a better listener with your wife? Well, on today's podcast, I'm talking with Michael LaRoque, who has 20 years of experience in construction where he earned a nationwide leadership award. He's walked through addiction, mental health, and relationship struggles, nearly calling it quits with his wife Laura after 4 years. Today, he's encouraging men to take charge of their lives physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually so they can be the man their partner and family need. You're listening to the Man They Remember podcast, where we're encouraging men to be the kind of man people will remember when we're gone. We're tearing down the macho man stereotype one episode at a time. Go to mantheyremember.com for more information. Well, welcome back, men, to another episode of the podcast. Got a treat for us today, so we're going to jump right into our conversation with Michael LaRoque. Michael, how you doing today?
I'm great, thanks, man.
Well, Michael has a Facebook page. He's got I don't know what you would call it. I guess kind of a podcast business that you're doing with your wife called The Revived Couple, and but also he's got some history with men's leadership, and he's got a story there. So we're going to jump right into one of those things. But one of the things that you shared before we got on was that you have an affinity for woodworking, and that kind of started your journey into men's leadership and your story with becoming a guy that's more comfortable being a leader and kind of rising up out of that. So maybe you can tell us how that a little bit of that journey in your story as we get started.
Oh, you nailed it, Dave. I was listening to one of your podcasts, and you guys were talking about woodworking and carpentry. I was like, oh man, these guys really sparked my interest, because I can fall down the rabbit hole of looking on YouTube videos and watching woodworking. And then my wife walks by and she's like, what are you doing? She's like, this is like, you do this for work, or you did it for work, and now you're watching this on TV. And just like, I was like, no, you don't understand. Because most men, I guess, listen to this, like you can fall into that trance of watching people, as silly as it sounds, planing wood and doing things. Right. You're like, holy God, this really gets
mesmerizing.
me going.
There's something cathartic about it when you watch it. I don't think it's as bad though as watching like guys play through video games and stuff like that. And I know those are pretty big videos on YouTube. Guys will spend hours and hours watching a playthrough all the way through a game. So it's maybe because at least when you're watching a woodworking video, you might learn something that you can go put into practice the next time you're working on something.
Oh, you nailed it. But I guess you could have that argument with my son. He'll be like, no, I've got to get past this part in a video game, and then now I've got to watch it.
Right.
But no, you nailed it. And so getting into woodworking, that's been my career. I'm a red, they call it Red Seal in Canada, but I'm journeyman carpenter, and then just went on and on from there for commercial construction. We can get into that a bit more, but I was a carpenter, but in commercial construction, you're a carpenter, but you don't really carpenter a whole lot. You just get things done, right? Whatever that looks like. Right. So I never really got to do any kind of cabinet work or any kind of fine woodworking or anything like that. So as soon as I was able to get a garage, I was like, hey, I really want to set up a woodworking spot and just kind of fall in love with that a little bit. And once I got going in it, I really you can really lose yourself in hours, and you have no idea what you're doing, like no idea of time. You just get going and you're in it. And for myself, that was a really good, call it active meditation almost, and just being able to relax and enjoy it.
Yeah, that's one of the things I love about it is it's involved enough that you can shut off your mind, or you have to shut off your mind from being distracted and thinking about other things, because you have to focus on what you're doing. If you're using power tools and table saws and radial arm saws and all those things, you don't want to get distracted for a second while you're using that. And but it's a good practice. It's good to have something like that shuts your mind off from the things it's normally stressing and thinking about, into something that's a lot more, just a very different woodwork. It's a very different thing for me. Most of my work is thinking work and and writing and all of that stuff. So to do something with my hands and have my mind on something entirely different from what I'm doing all week, it's restful, it's enjoyable. So I get what you're saying when with the meditation idea, it's almost like meditating. I bet there is some aspect of it that is very like that.
Oh, absolutely. And there's so much pride as well once you finish a project and you can show it to someone or gift it to give it to your wife or a friend or whoever you do gift it to. And myself, I got very fortunate in getting to spend time with my son in that wood shop as well. I mean, he would mess around and do different things, but getting to spend even just to be around that, it's just so nice, right? Because I always had that romantic idea of, thinking back to my childhood, and I grew up on a small farm. So I was always around my dad when he was working and doing things, but never really, never really thinking, never getting to enjoy it. I don't know how to put that. Like never really, you always see it on TV. I always see it on TV and I was like, oh, I want all these magic moments with my dad and all this fun stuff, right? But he's working, he's getting stuff done and never really thought about it. So now I live that a little bit to my son. I try to stop and make sure that he knows what's going on and what I'm doing. So it's pretty special.
Yeah. So tell us then your journey of going, because you got started in that field, but then you started by necessity or even maybe against your will a little bit, climbing the ladder, so to speak, in that industry. How did that happen? What was that like?
Yeah, for sure. I joke, but I'm half serious. It was a summer job that didn't end. And, I was in high school. I wasn't the greatest student at all. I'm in Canada, so played hockey and I did a lot of rodeo. So, I mean, between those two things, school really wasn't on the priority list too much.
So rodeo, huh?
Yeah, I used to race pony chuck wagons, so race horses.
Okay.
Yeah, so pony chuck wagons and chariots. Well, again, growing up on a small farm, my dad was quite into it when he was younger. He actually used to do a lot of sleigh rides in town with horses. So I was always around horses and harnesses and just wagons and things. And then one of my friends in high school and junior high, his father was really into it, and then I was hanging around them, and then they're like, well, Mike, you want to try this? Like, well, yeah, I do. And then got to talk to my dad about it, and he was like all for it. He's like, oh God, this is awesome. So it was a great way to spend some time with my dad and my friends. And you kind of turn into it's a bit of a traveling circus, right? Every weekend you're in a different town and you travel around, and the tight-knit community and just so much fun and so many good people that you meet. Yeah, it was pretty ridiculous. And then same with hockey, right? Like it was always some sort of some tournaments or games or anything like that. So, I mean, again, it's not right, but school kind of got pushed to the back burner a little bit. And so when I graduated high school, there wasn't a ton of doors open for me, really. Like I didn't have that. University wasn't really on the docket. I mean, I could have went and did some upgrading, but ended up, surprisingly enough, going into carpentry, because most people I know are either welders or loggers or truck drivers, that kind of thing. So got into carpentry and just, like I say, I think it was growing up on a small farm, getting things done. Like, I mean, there wasn't a lot of money, so you just had to do things, everything had to get fixed. So I was able to problem solve quite well. So I made it through my apprenticeship quite easily. And then as soon as I wasn't even a journeyman yet, and they're like, hey, Mike, I just need you to run this project. I'm like, okay, well, sure. I mean, here I am, right? So I just started running jobs, and it was like I didn't have a plan. My career, I didn't have a career plan at all. I had no plan as a man. I was just like, okay, you pay bills and live life, and this is what we're doing. And as I moved up the ladder, it kept, well, here's a $2 raise, here's a $2 raise, and so I was like, okay, this is just going to be life now. But I had no plan at all, and I kept doing it, and like I say, learned a lot of lessons along the way. But at the same time, I didn't even realize what I was doing. Like I was just, I don't know what you call it. It was like almost like an idiot savant. I was just like, it worked out really well, but I had no idea what I was doing. And I didn't really think about it till now. I can look back on some of the experiences I had and like, oh, wow, I really did handle that quite well. And I was able to navigate my way through things. And like you say, it kept going up the chain. And then I kind of hit the glass ceiling at 30 years old, where I was running the largest projects for our company. So we were doing, $10-12 million jobs and hitting that glass ceiling. And I wasn't getting the satisfaction anymore. There was really no, I mean, every day there's problems and things arise and stuff like that, but there wasn't really, I didn't jump out of bed or happy about work or anything like that. So hitting this glass ceiling, my relationship was suffering as well. I was newly married. I spent way too much time drinking my problems and my anxieties away. So that wasn't helping anything. And yeah, it just kind of hit that spot, and then it rolled off into a relationship. And then it was like, what do we do? Do we get a divorce? I'm not happy at anything. My wife wasn't happy. It was a really tricky spot.
Yeah, let's dive into that just a little bit. So you're working a lot. You maybe overworking, spending too much time working. Is that what you were saying? And then not spending enough time in the relationship.
It was one of those things where I was working all day. So you'd work from 7 to whatever, 5:30. And then I was doing a lot of, we call them side jobs, I guess, in carpentry, right? So I was, building fences, pouring concrete, doing all these things. So from 5:30 till, call it 9 during the summer, spring, summer, fall. And there was really no time for my wife. And then on top of that, from that time, when the weekend hit, I would be drinking to relax and solve my problems and get rid of my anxiety. So it was like, there was, even if you look at it on paper, it's like, really, where did my wife fit into that situation, right? And then when I was present or available, I really wasn't present, right? I really wasn't listening. I really wasn't taking her into account at all. And then when it did arise, I was like most men, I was like, no, I'm doing this for us, honey. Like, we need money to pay bills. I'm doing this for us so that we can go on that one vacation a year where, generally I'm drinking the whole time to relax. Right. And it was just a vicious cycle. So once I was able to see it through her lens, I was like, oh boy, okay.
Yeah. What was driving you there? What was the thing? Cause you're working 10 hours a day all summer long just for your job. And then you're working the other extra projects on the evenings and working, 3 or 4 or 5 extra hours every evening. And then maybe some weekends or you're exhausted on the weekends. So you don't feel like you have, emotional capital to give to your wife. But what was it that was really driving you to just keep going after more and more work all that time during those long days of the summer?
Oh man, I was always concerned about money, which is the silliest thing now looking back on it. Because I can never get that time back, right? And the money I was making was nominal. Like, I mean, I'm not driving a Ferrari or doing anything crazy, right? So it was pretty silly in hindsight. But that was kind of my driving factor. I was like, oh, let's go build this fence. We'll get $1,200 that we'll share between 3 of us, which is a few $100, which is great. You got some cash in your pocket, but at the same time, it's like that time would have been a lot better spent, with my wife, cultivating that relationship and building what we have now.
Right. So you're married for a few years, and then you kind of get to a point, you get to a moment, a pinnacle moment in your relationship, and what happens there? What's that part of the story?
Yeah, that was a real crux because my wife, I was just living this life, right, and getting by, paying bills. I thought in my mind and my modeling from my parents, like that was what men do, and that's what we pay bills, we get older. Hopefully we retire, and that's kind of life, right? But my wife was talking to other people. She was actually in some counseling. She was trying to get me to go counseling. And like most men, I was like, there's no way I'm going to counseling. So that didn't work. But she was really making some big changes in her life. And I'd seen it in her, right? And she was finally hitting that point where she wasn't dependent on me at all. She was starting to be her own person, do her own thing. And I was seeing these changes, and then we had talks about it, and I was still open. I accepted my own faults for sure. And she finally hit the point where it was okay, we're going to have to get a divorce here. And I was okay with that. And I was like, okay, I shouldn't say I was okay with it. I was quite, not happy at that. But at the same time, it's like, okay, I got to let you flourish. You're doing some big things, and I need you to I still love you. Right. So I wanted her to be happy and live her life. And I realized that I was just bringing her down with what I was offering. And in that, so I agreed to that, and we kind of gave it, call it 3 months to just get our affairs in order, get things settled. We didn't have kids yet. So it was, make sure we're both okay and taken care of and had vehicles, and we can kind of go our separate way. But in doing so, really fell back in love because Laura was doing her own thing, just completely. I was doing my own thing, and I was starting to find some happiness. Where I remember one story of we were driving, and I was like, oh, seeing this motorcycle, seeing a Harley Davidson, it's like, man, I really want one of those. but it was always, money or Lord, like my wife probably wouldn't want me to get one.
Right.
And it was always like a conversation. She was like, well, why don't you just get one? I shouldn't say it like that. She's probably like, just get one. And, so I was like, okay, I will. And I didn't have a license, didn't have nothing yet. But the next day, like me, I get very like most men, I jump in both feet, right? So I was like, okay, right away, go to the store, buy this motorbike, ended up getting my license and doing everything proper. But get this motorbike, and I was so happy. I wasn't, so having that motorbike and being on the road and doing different things, for me anyway, that took away my whole drinking. I shouldn't say whole drinking, but it took away a lot of that that need for that as an outlet. I had another outlet, something to work on, something to ride and, ride with some people and do different things. And so I was really starting to find myself and be happy and starting to get content in myself. And then once Laura started realizing this, and we just kind of fell back in love. It was pretty crazy. So she was doing her own thing. She was happy. I was doing my own thing and I was happy, but I was happy in myself and confident in myself. So we decided okay, well, let's give it some time. Let's not get a divorce. I think it was mainly me. I was like, no, we're not getting divorced. Like I want to try this. I want to stick this out. I'll do whatever it takes. So I even ended up going to AA for a while just to kind of sort through those demons as well. And really dig into it. So we decided to stay together, but Laura said, okay, we got to do something dramatic. You're not happy. I want to do something different as well. We got to get out of these situations that we're in. Nothing bad, but it was just in that stagnant, just same. It was like Groundhog Day almost, right? It was just day after day. So we sold everything. Whatever we had left, we put in a sea can. We moved to England for 2 years, London, England.
What's sea can?
Oh, shipping container, like a steel shipping container. So we put whatever we could store in there, sold everything else. We got, what did we say? We got 2 one-way tickets and 1 week's accommodation. We got a 1 week Airbnb. We had no idea what we were doing. We had 2-year visas and ended up making it work. It was crazy. My wife, she got a job at Lululemon. I guess it's like a athletic wear. So she got a job and she was working in Chelsea. So right on the high street with all the highfalutin, all the real fancy people. And I ended up getting a job at a gym, like a workout gym. Okay. Selling memberships. There's a super high-end gym. It really wouldn't work where I'm at right now, but in central London, it works really well. There's, a DJ and there's these crazy classes and there's fighting and professional bodybuilding. Yeah. Like it's just the craziest scene, but ended up making it work, and it worked really well because we didn't live like travelers. Because I ended up with this job that was a commission-based job, and me being Canadian in London, I have the accent apparently. So it worked out really well, and people it just got on really well with a lot of people. And so anyway, so we were in London. I changed like 180 as a person, just, walking around, riding bikes, doing all this crazy stuff, and just really enjoying life again. So I, again, found my vigor and found myself a bit, and our relationship just flourished there. It was really amazing.
Yeah. So it sounded like when you kind of pulled away from working all the time, and then maybe would it be fair to say you were using work, how would I say this, using work to keep your mind from thinking about things, to keep you, as long as you're occupied with working 17, 18 hours a day, you didn't have to think about life. You didn't have to think about your marriage. You didn't have to really worry about it. You could just kind of use it to keep your mind toned down a little bit. And or was that just accidental, that it was kind of keeping you from really evaluating what was going on in your marriage and in your home life?
Oh, I think you nailed it, Dave. Where I wasn't really aware of it at the time, but again, looking back on it, that was the perfect excuse. It was the perfect crutch to not have to look at myself for so many things. I was able to hide in that work and use money as the excuse, as the golden kind of excuse. And that was, and it was almost acceptable, right? If I told my situation to anybody else, or, needed backup for my stories, everyone would agree. Like, no, he's working hard. He's trying to supply, support his family, support his wife. Yeah. So I was using that as the biggest crutch there was. Yeah.
I think that's easy for us to do as men. We don't really like to be alone with our thoughts, all that often. We don't like to, sit down and think, oh, why am I working 70, 80 hours a week? Why am I, and then why am I, when I get done with work, going in and spending most of the time and the free money that I earned doing the extra jobs on alcohol and not with my wife? Well, we don't want to stop and ruminate on any of those things. It's easier to just kind of keep plowing through and say, and use that excuse. I gotta bring home the bacon, right? I gotta make the money. I gotta provide for my family. I gotta keep this ship afloat. And we do those things, and we use those, I think, just as an excuse to not really wrestle with, what we're thinking about, and maybe down underneath, it's not even just a relationship issue that we're afraid to deal with, but we're afraid to know who we really are. We're afraid to kind of dig deep into our own mind, into our own, psyche, and figure out, that maybe there's something about who I am and my identity that I need to work on. And so as long as we can keep ourselves busy, we don't have to actually go there and think about that.
Oh man, you wrapped that up perfectly. I see it all the time now with coaching other men and with men's groups. Those are kind of the main points that always pop up, right? The more time we can spend not looking at ourselves, right, and busy work and on the outside making it look like, I'm working so hard doing this all for my family, but inside you're just ignoring you're doing everything you can to not look in the mirror on that.
Right. So you're in London, you're doing things differently, you're developing, and that's one of the things that is good about a big change like that is, you change environment entirely. It's, it's easier to sever ties with some of those old habits and routines and patterns when you get out of the same traffic flow, so to speak, that you're in on a day in, day out basis, and you go into an entirely different country, different way of life, different job, different career, and you can actually start looking a little bit more intentionally, say, oh, I was just kind of stuck in this, this skipping record, going back and forth and looping and not getting out of that loop. But now you get into a different world and you're doing something different. What are some lessons that you started to learn when you're over there in London and you're evaluating things, looking back at where you were and where you are at that moment? What are some of the key lessons you learned during that time?
Yeah, in London was great, right? Because I was able to, like we said, kind of 180 career-wise, was completely different. And just the biggest thing for me was to enjoy myself. I was like, okay, this is who I am. Like, I mean, I always took that carpenter, that builder, that leader, that whole role as that was my persona, I guess, or that's who I was, right? I didn't really want it, but that's just who I was to everybody else. So I was like, okay, this is what I have to be and this is what I am. But when I was able to go, halfway around the world and just really, truly be who I was, I was just having so much fun and so many open conversations. And I learned to be a lot more vulnerable, a lot more open with people, but at the same, I talk about it as well quite a bit, but not vulnerable in the sense of, vomiting of my emotions on everybody, but, picking your spots and knowing when to do it. But having some really, really deep, honest conversations with a lot of people, a lot of men, a lot of women even, and just, it was really amazing experience of really getting to open up and not having to put on that tough guy persona or that, just that carpenter, that builder persona, right? I was able to just be who I was. And now looking back, I was like, well, that even made you stronger, right? And I was able to bring that back to my life when I came home. In a sense, there's a few hiccups along the way, we'll call it.
Right. So you're in London for 3 years, is that right?
2 years. We had 2-year working visas. Yeah.
Okay. So you're in London for 2 years. You'd been married 3 years before that or so, a few years?
Yeah, 2010 we got married. So we were married 4 years before we moved. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you go there, you have a rough, first 4 years, maybe rough isn't the right word, just kind of a ambivalent first 4 years. And then things are about to fall apart. You take some time off, you get things working together. You go over to London to spend a couple of years there, reorient your life around an entirely different set of values. And you come back then to Canada, right? Is that where you went after London?
Yeah. So that's where there's a couple hiccups along the way, but trying to keep the big city life going, right? Our visas ran out. I love London. I would still be there, to be honest, if we didn't have to come home. And visas ran out, and it's really not like central London is where I love being, but at the same time, it's not very conducive to raising small children.
Right.
But yeah, so my wife, when we left, she was 3 months pregnant when we left London, which is awesome. But when we came back, I was like, hey, I just really want to keep this life going, keep this lifestyle. So I drug my pregnant wife out to Vancouver. We're in central Alberta, so I drug her out to Vancouver, out in British Columbia, and we didn't know a soul out there. And I wasn't sure what I was going to do. It was like, okay, well, Laura's coaching. She just started her coaching business. Like, hey, I can do this with you as well. So roll that for a few months, and then ran out of money in Vancouver kind of thing, right? And it's like, oh God, I got to get a job. And I was so dead stuck on not going back to carpentry or construction, right? I was like, okay, I got to stay away from construction. So I ended up selling cars. And it's very interesting. I'm so glad I did it. I did it for a year, we'll call it. I learned so many lessons and so much about people and struggles. And that was strictly commission based, right? So it was a very interesting time. And then in that Vancouver move, obviously my son was born and different things. And so I really put a lot of hardships on us in the sense of, if I would have came back to construction back in central Alberta once after London moved, we would have been fine. We had good savings. Everything would have been hunky dory, but moved us out to Vancouver, trying to keep that going. And I never chalk anything up as a failure, but that one was pretty close. I almost got us stuck out there without borrowing money from people or whatever, but I almost ran us out of money. But I ended up with enough money, was able to get a U-Haul and get us back to central Alberta. So he got us back here, and then I hit a bit of a depression because of that. I'll call it that failure. And then I shouldn't say a bit of a depression. I got depressed because then I went back to my old job, exact same spot. So I literally pushed pause on my life for 3 years and went right back into that exact same socket. Like I fit perfectly in there. And it was like, honestly, like nothing changed. I had a few more wrinkles on my face because I was older, and that's about it. Like I literally didn't change anything. And when I did that, I hit a depression for a while on that one.
Yeah. It's amazing how you can get away from a situation and you can change everything. You can be in an entirely different mental state. But then if you go, you find yourself back there eventually, it's so easy. It's how the brain works. We talk about, neural pathways and how hard it can be to create a neural pathway, a new neural pathway, and really get something, on to a place in your life where it's more habitual, where it becomes more second nature. It takes 60 to 90 days to really get a neural pathway firmly established. And so when you're trying to get away from something, start something new, and change your life entirely, it can be hard to get over that hurdle. And yet you can put in all this work, you can spend years, and you can actually get there. And you come back to a situation, all those old neural pathways are still there. And so it's literally what you said. You can get right, but you just literally just plug yourself right back into the circuit, and everything is just flowing like it was, and you don't even realize it. Within a day or two, you're back to the old habits, old patterns, and all that old circuitry that's around you is triggering you into back to doing all the other things. Did you find yourself wanting to go back to drinking and that kind of stuff too, or?
Well, you nailed it. So I did like all of that, right? And it was just like, oh, what am I doing? So then, like I say, I was really down on myself, but at the same time, I wasn't using drinking as a crutch anymore, which was great. So I had that as a win, but that forced me, just like we were talking about before, that forced me to really look at a lot of things and a lot of issues and a lot of my anxieties. And I didn't have that crutch to lean on anymore to numb all that, right? So I was facing that head on. So I went through quite a time of just extremely unhappy, or making myself unhappy. Looking back on that time, even I was like, there was nothing to really be unhappy about. I had a newborn son. My wife we're all healthy, and things like that. But I put myself in such a depression of, I let myself down. I let us down. We're made for big things, and I'm right back to where we're at. So yeah, it was. I was really beating myself up, but again, looking back on it, I'm like, no, I did what was needed for the family. I got us back on our feet, money wise, and doing extremely well. And just it was what was needed at the time. But it took me a long time to realize that, and to realize that I was doing the right thing for us, right? I was just so concentrated on myself and beating myself up as a failure that I didn't realize, it kept the family moving and kept us going.
Right. So were you down on yourself because you felt like a failure and providing for your family, or were you down on yourself because you had to go back to the place you had kind of escaped from, and the position you were in before going to London? What was it that was causing you to get down on yourself?
I think after leaving London, I was full of, so much vigor and so much just anything is possible, right? I had that whole mindset, and I was like, this is us, baby. We're going to live the life that we want, have some freedom, do our coaching, just be happy and not have to, have a regular 9-to-5 job. And I really felt that in my heart. And then when I wasn't able to produce that, I just took that as a big defeat, a really big loss. And I just did not wear that well. And then, like I say, going back to the old job, right back into where I was, did that for a year, and then ended up getting an opportunity where I always put myself down as being not very smart, right? Like as school smart. I ended up having to do a bunch of tests, and I'm extremely dyslexic. So, which makes sense in the hindsight now, because we'll get into that story a little bit. But so anyway, so I was always down on myself not being smart enough, all these things. But then I ended up with this opportunity with another company that to move into the office and do project management on commercial projects. So I was like, yeah, let's do it. Something has to change my life, right? So do that. And so this was 4 years ago now. And it was awesome, actually. Like, it was good for me to do that. It was very, very challenging. But at the same time, it brought up a whole lot of other demons of, I fought myself a lot without being smart enough. Everyone I work with is, they got 4-year degrees. These guys have all these things, right? They're so smart, and I'm having hard times with spreadsheets, and my mind's fried at 9 a.m.
Right.
But I forget, looking back, right? Like, selling cars, doing all this stuff in the field, like, I know people. So I was able to do very well at this job, but at the same time, in my own head, beating myself up every day, almost every minute of that job of, you're not smart enough, you're an idiot, you're doing things wrong. But on the outside, everyone I talked to was like, no, you're killing it, and ended up, winning awards and doing different things with this job. But at the same, I was making myself very unhappy with it. And then that's where I ended up. This is just 6 months ago now. I ended up leaving that job and working with my wife full time now on our coaching practice, which is great. I've never been happier, right? And it frees me up so much to spend tons of time with my son. My son and I have quite a bond now, which we always did, and I always wanted to make sure that was okay. But I would beat myself up quite a bit as well, like most men, where my discipline of my son, I would discipline him because I was so stressed out, so much anxiety that, he would do something just nominal, like it did not need the reaction that I had, right? And I would just blow up. And he's going to love you no matter what, but I'd blow up, and then my wife would be upset because of what I did or how I acted. And so that put strain on that relationship, put strain on my son. Then I would beat myself up at night once he went to bed. I was like, oh, what are you doing? Like, that was the worst thing. Right. But again, I would just get in that loop, and I kept doing it and doing it. Right. Cause I had so much anxiety about work, and I was really worried. I was really scared. And that's where I got that dyslexia prognosis. Cause I went to a psychiatrist and like, man, what is wrong with me? Like, why can I not just be happy? I ended up actually going there because my wife, I called her. I was like, hey babe, I just won. I worked for a company that was national wide. It was about 500 or 600 employees. Called her like, hey, I just won leader of the year in our company. And she's like, oh, okay, well, how does that make you feel? I'm like, well, they probably just gave it to me because, they had to give it to a minority, or they had to do, like, I just played it off so much. She's like, there is something wrong with you. Like, you have to accept what you are and realize what you are. So ended up going to a psychologist and doing some tests and doing a bunch, actually not some tests. It was like 8 hours of testing. And realized I was quite quite low. I think I was in like the 7th or 8th. I can't remember, like percentile. So for learning, so math and English, things like that. So it's really low. But my applied learning was through the roof because I had to learn so many tricks on how to do different things and just get through life. So it really explained a lot of things. I don't rely on that diagnosis by any means at all. It's just a good story for guys that, you know, if there is problems like that, there's definitely ways to get through it. And we create our own little tips and tricks and ways to get through life. But yeah, so I had that, and it was just, there was a lot I let ball up in myself, and I got very scared too. And in the sense of I'm a healthy person. Like I've never really had to spend time in a hospital or anything crazy, right? A few bumps and bruises, but nothing wild. But I was very, very aware of like, if I go down this road, or keep going down the road I was like, I'm going to make myself sick. Like I'm already having, you know, my stomach just doesn't feel good all day because of the anxiety. And like, I'm going to create some big problems here soon. Right. And, and I just was having terrible energy. So I tried to go, and then another thing, I tried to get the easy pill again. I tried to go to, went to get a bunch of blood work done and different things for my energy. And it's like, just really hoping it was going to be low testosterone so I could just get an easy fix and carry on. But turns out, you know, testosterone's through the roof, but my estrogen was through the roof because my cortisol was through the roof. Like I just, all these things were against me. So I was like, okay, something again has to change. The money's great. But again, everything it's just not about money. The more I realize it, and, you know, you talk to older men and talk to men like in my circles, and everyone can tell you that, but till you live it, you don't realize, right? Like there's so much more to life than just getting that paycheck.
Right. Yeah. So you get this award though, leader of the year in a company of 500 or 600 employees. You can't accept it, at least mentally, because you just don't believe it. You don't believe that about yourself. But now, several years later, you're talking about, you know, leading men and becoming comfortable or confident or whatever the word you would choose is to, you know, as a man to lead other men. So what are some of the lessons you've learned then, and since that award and since those diagnoses and all that stuff to now you're saying, you know, being a man who leads other men is a good thing, and it's something we all as men can learn. What are some of the things you've learned there?
Yeah, for sure. So the big one, I try to break it down a little bit now, is body. Because I would always fluctuate, right? Like, especially being in sports, my life, or like, you know, hockey and stuff like that. But I didn't realize how much the physical body had, like, the importance of that. So going back into really taking care of myself and, you know, it doesn't have to be, you know, hitting the gym every day, but just some sort of movement, really taking care of myself, watching what I was putting in my body. So while all that was going on, when I was all depressed and things, you know, I'd sit on the couch with a bag of chips and, you know, again, I was eating my feelings away, but I wasn't eating carrots. So I was feeding my body junk. I was thinking junk, you know, so again, the outcome's going to be junk, right? So really taking care of myself, again, with what I was eating. And then the biggest one was with just accepting who I was, accepting my faults, which again, easy to talk about, but just to dig in on those and really accepting who I was. Yeah, I used to be a drunk. Yeah, I'm not the smartest person in the world. Yeah, I'm all these things, right? I'm not tall enough, but but all these things, right? And then really accepting those and owning those and using those as lessons. I use them for lessons now all the time with people, right? And just accepting that who I was. And, you know, being able to look in the mirror and be okay with that and know that, you know, my son will always love me no matter what, you know, so I always have that. My wife loves me because but just changes I was making were really opening up her eyes and opening up her heart even more, of really accepting that masculine role and just really feeling into it, really feeling that whole provider, that protector, and just really embodying that. That's where a lot of that confidence came from. Of, you know, I used to be a boxer as well, so I boxed a lot, but then I got away from all that, right? So got away from any kind of combat or any kind of sport like that. So then ended up getting into jiu-jitsu, which was very just calming and peaceful and I shouldn't say it, calm again, peaceful, but on the other side, someone's trying to choke you. So it's very interesting, and it just beat down the ego that I had as a man, right? Like, of all these things, that it really gets rid of that ego. So that's kind of the golden rule for me, is just lose that ego, lose that chip on your shoulder, be an open man, be accepting, be present, and be honest. And then it flips. It doesn't make you, like, you don't have to be some macho guy or put on this persona. You be open, you be honest, you be vulnerable. And then in everyone else's eyes and your own, you realize how strong you are and how masculine you really are. And then the whole world's at your disposal after that.
Yeah. So, and if this is unfair, what I'm about to say, feel free to correct me. But it sounds like when you were, back at the beginning of the story, before you go to London, before you're, emotionally aware and maybe emotionally immature at that point in time. I don't know if that's fair to say, but
yeah.
So back when you're struggling emotionally and mentally and not knowing who you are, you felt, it seems like you had a stronger need to do the things that we typically associate with the, typical macho man, as working hard, working 17 hours a day in construction, and then drinking, drinking your troubles away and all of that stuff. That's kind of the typical man, right? That's like, if you look at how the media portrays men, that's basically what it looks like in sitcoms and TV shows. But then as you go on this journey and you become emotionally mature, and you start wrestling with who you really are and where your identity is and all of that stuff, then you become less dependent on needing to be that kind of macho man to prove that you're a man. And your proof that you're a man is in these other things: your relationship with your son, relationship with your wife, and those things. Is that a fair assessment?
Oh, Dave, you nailed it. If there was a stamp that said like stereotype, it probably could have put that right on my forehead. You left out the part of I was driving around in a big jacked up truck.
I didn't know that. Yeah.
Oh man, no, it's just funny. You almost nailed everything. It's 100%, right? I was just putting on this mask of thinking what I needed to be, like this outside persona of I've seen everybody else in front of me do that. So I was like, okay, this is how you do it. Right. But
not that there's anything wrong with driving a big jacked up truck. They're cool, right?
No, it was awesome, to be honest. It was pretty sweet, except when you had to put tools in the back. If you had to lift something really heavy, then it was a bit of a pain. But no, absolutely, right? And I just thought that's what you had to do. But no, it was so much more once I was able to really open up and get into myself. But at the same time, it's easy to say that and easy to talk. And I talk to people about it all the time. But until you live some of it and really embody it and feel it, it's not gonna hit home.
Yeah. So when you didn't feel like a man on the inside, you felt the need to prove that you were a man on the outside. And then when you started feeling more like a man internally, then you don't, all of a sudden you don't need to go out and prove, hey, look at me, look at how macho I am. I've got other ways to show you that I'm a man. Is that right?
It is. And then on the outside of that, once I was okay with like being that man inside and really letting that man be, my whole outside world, it couldn't be any more masculine, or couldn't be any more manly in the sense of, on like looking at it, right? Lots of hunting, fishing, fighting, loving. It's so much more, but it's not it's not those bad traits about that, right? It's not just getting drunk and hiding my feelings. Now it's being open with my feelings and living a more sober life.
Yeah. So what would be something you would say? We've kind of talked about to men directly and embracing their masculinity and wrestling emotionally with those feelings, not burying them, not hiding them. What would you say to a guy who's listening and maybe they're in a point in their relationship, with his wife, or with his girlfriend or something, and they're getting to that point where she's feeling like your wife felt and he's doing what you did. What would be something you would say to that guy to try to help him snap out of it, or to just, a little catalytic step he could take to move out of that routine that he's stuck in?
For sure. And that's what I do with a lot of men now. A lot of people come to me with that exact scenario of, hitting that spot. And what do we do? Is the first thing we talked about a little bit is just getting that body right. Most people that come into that situation aren't doing anything for their body. And it doesn't mean, again, like I said, going to the gym 7 days a week. But even if they but being intentional about it. If they go for a walk for a half an hour,
Mm-hmm.
or I do burpees, right?
Right.
I do a lot of that, and I have like a whole burpee challenge and a whole thing wrapped around that in 10 days, 10-day challenges and things with those. But just anything to get your body moving, which again, there's always a rebuttal though. I've been the man on the other side. Like, I work all day, I walk around all day in my work boots, I'm tired, I'm sore. I'm not going for a walk for a half an hour. But they have to be intentional walks, right? Like, you have to really mean it, and that could turn into a run. It can turn into so many things. But once we start getting our body right, just as men, I've noticed we just need something to. We're hunters, right? We're protectors. We need our body to be moving. That's what we came from. Rowing a boat, doing something, right? We gotta move our body. So most of us are so stagnant that you just let that energy stew, and typically it turns into something negative. So if we can, just move that energy, switch it around. But with that, once we start getting the body right a little bit, it is really opening up, and just learning to listen is that's the next hurdle to go to. It's always easy to like, oh, just go talk to your wife and be vulnerable. But how do I do that? Right? Like, you can't just start blabbing or start crying to your wife about little problems, because that's not the right way to go at it either. Because then she's going to realize like, oh boy, my guy doesn't have a plan. Like, what did I hitch my wagon to? So you got to really learn to listen and communicate properly with your partner. And that's why I tell most men in the listening part of like, shut everything down. If you have a phone, put it away. If you have the TV on, like, no, I can listen. Like, no, you turn the TV off and just really listen. And the silver bullet is don't solve the problems.
That's a hard one for me. And most guys, it's just like, I want to, especially when it's someone you love, right? They're in pain. And you see the problem, so it's like, if I can solve this problem, I'll resolve the pain that you're in, and then you'll be better off. But that is not the best move in that situation.
Oh man, and especially being a professional problem solver, right? That's all I did all day at work. So I was like, "Oh, babe, I got the plan for you." It's like, no, that is not how I do it, right? So shut down, be very intentional with your listening, even body language, right? Like most of us sit on the couch and just kind of whatever, but body language, really being listening and eye contact, and those first few times, don't say a word, or bring in the old "yeah, I understand," or you might have to kind of reword it so that you make sure that you understand what she's saying. But aside from that, don't try to problem solve, don't do anything. And those little steps, do it once, do it twice, do it 3 times, and all of a sudden your wife will start realizing, oh, this guy is listening to me, and I'm able to open up and be even more vulnerable and be even more emotional. Because that's what women are, right? They're feminine, they're radiant, they're a hurricane of emotions, right? Most times when you walk in the door, it's like blah 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 rah, rah, rah. And you don't know, and then you as a man, you're like, whoa, I just need 10 minutes to like leave me alone kind of thing. But all she wants is someone to talk to, someone to listen. So if you can start listening, and again, it goes against all our instincts as men, but if you can sit there, listen, and just let it be, then that'll make her feel safe. Once she feels safe in the relationship, once she has that container, then you can open up and start being vulnerable, and being vulnerable from a place of emotions, from a place of your feelings, not the minute little problems, not like the everyday, like, I don't know how we're going to pay this bill. I don't know how we're going to do that. Don't bombard her with those things. Those are more left for a group of men, or your friend, your trusted friends that you have that safe container with more men. Those are men problems. Most men in that circle have been through those problems, and they can help you relate through that. Right. But don't go to your woman with those, because that's not her job, and she won't. And then again, like I say, you won't make her feel safe, and that whole container will break down. But once she can feel safe in that relationship, then you can really open up from a place of love, from a place of, feeling some emotions. And they're baby steps. You're not going to jump into it straight away and get into the deep, darkest things. But once you open up about a few things, it makes everything so much easier. And I harp on a lot about that of the world is hard enough. Outside of us, like everything bombarding us and hitting us with everything. But as long as we can have that home, have that home safe, and have that home taken care of, everything else will be easy, right? And work as a team. I'm very big on team. Just even sports, you can relate to it a lot of. You and your wife are a team. You're not trying to compete with her by any means. The better you are, the better she'll be. The better she is, the better you are. But most people don't see that, and they always butt heads with each other, and then the whole team breaks down.
Yeah, so it sounds like one of the things you're saying is we have to learn to be less selfish when it comes to our even our approach towards work, our approach towards our home life, our approach towards our relationships. The typical guy response is, well, I work hard all day, so I deserve to do what I want at night, and really, so, and like even with the physical thing, getting physically in shape so that you're in a better mental and emotional state. Working out isn't something that every guy wants to. Maybe you're wired that way, and I know that there are guys like my brother who was on that woodworking podcast. He just loves working out. Everywhere he goes, even on vacation, he has to do some kind of jog, and he's doing burpees and he's doing push-ups and he's doing all that stuff. I've never been that kind of a guy, and maybe someday I'll get there. But even looking at the way you're living your physical life, and saying, well, I work hard all day. I work hard all day, so I don't need to, I don't need to go do that physical activity in the evening. But you're not, doing it because you haven't been, haven't been physical for some guys. And some guys, my jobs, I'm not nearly as physical as a lot of other men are. But I'm doing this because I want my body to be in a good place, so I can be in a better mental and emotional place, so that I can serve my wife and I can serve my kids, and so it's kind of flipping that from everything's about me and getting what I want to no, my whole life is about serving others.
It's taken me so long to realize that, and I was doing it kind of by accident for a long time, but it is. Once you realize that the service you can give to anybody else and how you make other people feel, your life is just going to get better tenfold. Like it has no choice. It's going to get better, right? Your community is going to be so much better.
Right.
Your group of men is going to be so much better and stronger for having you in it. And like I said, the biggest thing for me is our kids, right? I have my son, he's 5, and we have another one on the way in a couple months. So I'm very, very excited to break a lot of those habits, a lot of that generational stuff can stop, right? And they don't have to see any of that. They don't have to be part of that. And we can now create, they're all going to have their own things, and that's what they have to go through. But at least they don't have to go through, they can go through it with a set of tools that, will make it a lot easier. It's not going to make it, super, easy, great, whatever, but they're going to have this set of tools or this toolbox that can really lead them in the right direction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so it's getting that perspective change, approaching your relationship with your wife. Just knocked my microphone there, but talk with my hands a lot, and I don't even realize that most of the time. But instead of approaching, a lot of couples, they approach their relationship as, well, I need this from him and I need this from her, and as long as I'm getting this from him and I'm getting this from her, then we're going to be able to be in some kind of symbiotic state, and everything will be okay. But eventually that breaks down, that wears down, because you're just taking, both people are taking in the relationship, where you have to change it to, as opposed to, I'm taking from you what I need, I'm giving to you what you need, and she's giving to me what I need, and I'm giving, and we're giving in exchange. Now, so instead of taking and emptying one another's cups, we're giving and filling one another's cups. Then we have something to give from when the other needs something, right? It's an upside down way of thinking about it as our world thinks today.
Oh, you're exactly right with that. I talk to a lot of people about sports. So I always say sports, right? If you have two star players that are on the same line or anything, that are really feeding each other, one's a shooter, one's a passer, whatever that looks like, it's great. Right. But you can also have 2-star players that don't ever give each other the ball, the puck, or whatever that is. And the team suffers, everybody suffers, right? So you nailed it. If both people are filling up each other's buckets, there's no other outcome than great. It really is. Even when big problems hit you, if sickness hits you, death hits, certain things hit. It'll be a lot easier to take those hits as a team and as a well-oiled machine, instead of trying to do it on your own and pushing everyone else away.
Right. Yeah, it's like Michael Jordan, when he was on the Bulls and he had Scottie Pippen there, they won the 3 back-to-back championships. But then he retires, and then he comes out of retirement for, I can't remember what team it was, Washington, I think. And comes out of retirement because the team that he bought, I think, was struggling. So he thought, well, I can play on my own team, and I can help us, I can help get us back. But he's in that role, he's a one-man show. I think he set a record like 80 points in one game, all by himself, but they still never were able to rise to the level of the Bulls teams that he was on, because he didn't have a Scottie Pippen. He didn't have someone else to throw the ball to, or to get him the ball when he was in a good spot to shoot. So it's, you need that, at least one other person in your life to really be able to excel and thrive. We can't do it by ourselves. We need other men. We need our family. We need our wives, and it needs to be the team partnership you're talking about. That's good.
Yes, absolutely. And with men especially, I always tell that, because there's so much pride and there's so much in society now that shows, be that lone wolf, be that wall of emotions. Don't talk about your feelings. Don't do anything, right? It's better to go it alone. But you have that group of men. Like I say, we come from hunting, right? So all those hunting packs, and, guys were able, and there was older men in that, there was younger men, everyone had different experiences, and you were just able to talk openly, and you figure out, you can solve a lot of problems in that, right? A lot of those older guys have been there, done that. They'll laugh at you when they hear, you think the end of the world. They're like, oh yeah, I remember my first time, and they'll tell you a story about it, or some sort of learning, right? Or the young guy might tell you, like, you just learn so much from a group of men, and but again, creating that safe container and being open with each other.
Well, Michael, thank you so much. Michael LaRoque, you can check him out on Facebook. They've got a page there, The Revived Couple, and you said you're mainly focused on Instagram, but you've got it on Facebook as well. Is it The Revived Couple on Instagram as well? Yeah, The Revived Couple. Everything's there. There's a lot of links. One's a really good one that I talk about men with burpees, like we talk about physically. There's a 10-day challenge on that where just do 50 burpees a day. Any time of the day, you can break them up however that looks, but you can do it by yourself, with your kids, however that looks. But it's just a good way to get that blood moving, get that energy burning, and it's not gonna kill you by any means. But it's a good way to get moving, but at the same time, there's a lot of integrity in it, because you set a 10-day challenge, or you set a 10-day goal, and you want to keep that goal. So good integrity and have respect for yourself. And there's a lot wrapped up in it. Yeah. And then, let's see, and your wife, you and your wife do some coaching, do some other things. So, if guys are wanting to maybe get a little bit more intentional about, themselves as men, or in their relationship with their wives, they can check you out there as well. Absolutely, Dave. Anything at The Revived Couple. So there's something for women with my wife. She does a lot with women. As a couple, her and I have a few courses out as couples, and then myself for some men's work as well. So we can kind of both be good, and then you can bring it to a relationship and learn some real tangible tools that will just make your relationship even better. Great. Well, thanks so much for being here with us today. You have a final word that you want to get in there before we wrap things up? No, not really, Dave. I think we wrapped up a lot, and I really appreciate yourself and all the work you're doing, and just keeping that message out there, and love listening to you. So thanks a lot. Thank you for listening to the Man They Remember podcast. You can find us online at www.mantheyremember.com, facebook.com/mantheyremember, and instagram.com/mantheyremember. Thanks for leaving a review and your rating on Apple Podcast, and most importantly, thanks for sharing this podcast with your friends.